Coming up, peptides, peptide therapy. That's all the rage right now. A lot of people are talking about it. Your neighbors are probably talking about it. Golf buddies, the carpool lane. It's a controversial subject right now. FDA just recently took away some peptides. Harder to get. Not impossible, but harder. And we're going to talk about that today with Dr. Cullsion and just kind of facts and figures and myths about peptide therapy. It's been around for decades. We believe it soon will be on the forefront of helping people with age preservation, hair growth, muscle mass, weight loss, sleep, cognitive function. So peptides, they're good. They're good for you. And we're going to tell you why. And we're going to just kind of also tell you what to watch out for. So tune in, stick around. From the Mojo Podcast Studio, coming up next with Dr. Cullsion. Stay tuned. All right, we're ready back here in the saddle today with Dr. Cullsion talking about all things peptides, which has been a really hot topic lately, and it's a forefront and kind of the crosshairs of what we do. One of the things that we help patients with. So we'll just cut to it. There's a lot of stuff going on in peptides. A lot of podcasts on peptides.
Yes.
We've listened to a few of them. What we're not going to get into, or at least intentionally today, is all the FDA regulation stuff, all the different why these things are being banned and who's scrutinizing them and whether they're good for you or bad for you. As a physician, I've taken you at your word. I know a lot of our patients do. You believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about just fundamentally what peptide therapy is. What is kind of going on recently with some of the changes without getting into the politics of it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, we could have some case studies about some people that have really benefited from it. But what's a peptide? That's, I think, the number one thing people that we hear questions of. What's a peptide?
Right. So peptide is, there's always been peptides, but now there's this category of treatment, medication, supplements. I would say peptide treatments are somewhere between, prescription medications and supplements, but peptide is really slang category, and most of the of those medications or treatments are made of a peptide. Some of them are not, which is silly. Some of them are not really peptides, but they got put in that class of medication. So peptide is really just a molecular structure. Most people have heard of what amino acids are. Our body has about 20 amino acids. It's a building block of our body, and we need these amino acids for consumption to live and for building. And some of the amino acids we can make, which are called non-essential amino acids, and some of them we can't make, so we have to consume them. But anyway, these are when most people look at the label on food, we see the fats, we see the carbohydrate section, we see the protein. Well, a peptide is just a small chain of amino acids. Of these amino acids I'm speaking of, just bound together by a peptide bond. And so this assortment of about 20 of them in different combinations makes a characteristic peptide. So a protein is just a very, very, very long peptide. There's what they call polypeptides, which might be more than 50 amino acids, and just peptide is less than 50 amino acids. And when one gets real big, a protein, then it's just, a peptide is just called a protein. So sorry. So just like with carbohydrates, there's disaccharides, and then with fatty acids, you got your trans fatty acids, you got your polysaccharides. So those are all different types of molecules that are being classified. So what makes amino acid different than a carbohydrate or fat or a steroid or something like that? So amino acid, let's say like you can go buy amino acid on the counter and say, I'm going to take an amino acid, like arginine or leucine or lysine, and there's little health benefits of that, whatnot. But when you take these amino acids and put them together in different combinations, that all the amino acids have a little central common component that characterizes them as an amino acid. They have some carboxyl group, they've got an amino in there and some hydrogen that are exactly the same, and then each one of those has that, except each one might have a little side chain or a little characteristic about it that makes that particular amino acid unique. That's right. And so we need all 20 of these in our body for building blocks.
20 amino acids?
Mm-hmm.
So there's only 20 amino acids?
There's around 20 of them that in the human, that's that make up protein and make up peptides, make up polypeptides.
Okay.
And
so a peptide is a short chain amino acid
right.
that over time diminish in our body. And the way I think I heard it, which kind of clicked in my mind, is a peptide, that short chain amino acid is maybe like a sentence or a phrase. And a protein is like a whole chapter, even a whole book. So it's a lot of these put together. Is that an accurate analogy?
It is. A protein is just a lot of amino acids in a very long complex. That's correct.
So when people are trying to build muscle and they need protein, they're getting a lot of different amino acids just built up, clumped together a lot in one bunch. And that becomes a protein. Is that right?
That's right.
So what peptide therapy is doing is it's taking these short chain amino acids, and what is it doing? What's the peptide?
Okay, so these short chain amino acids, peptides and polypeptides are already in our body anyway. Not just building structures that to make muscle and every organ in your body has to have amino acids and peptides and protein and all that to make up stuff. But what's key here is that these peptides, that the one we were speaking of, are signaling agents in our body already. There's about 7,000 that have been identified, but there's about 40,000. But I'm just saying that, about 7,000. Then there's a lot of unique ones. For instance, insulin. We make insulin. Our beta cells of the pancreas makes insulin, and that's a signaling agent, right? It's not for nutrition. We don't eat insulin, right? I mean, right. So there's some up here in your brain that sends signals down to your cells and tells them what to do. Now, is that a hormone? Well, that, most people think of hormones, they think of sex hormones or steroids like cortisol and all that. Okay, that's all a foundation of cholesterol. So those are all the same based off a cholesterol molecule. Yeah. But anything that's a signaling agent, you could call it a hormone. But in this situation, we're just calling it peptides because it's just made of amino acids. That's it. So
peptides are just made of amino acids?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's only amino acids in certain little combinations, and as you were alluding to, whatever combinations those are, you can't just say, hey, let's take these 20 amino acids and let's get about 50 of them and get on a Scrabble board and line them all up and let's start giving them to somebody and let's see what happens. Well, that's probably going to do nothing. Mm-hmm. Okay. But certain combinations become like a code in your body. There might be a cell that's in your gut. Yeah. That particular peptide therapy might go into your bloodstream and land on receptors in your gut and tell those cells to do something. It's a signaling agent.
That's what the peptide therapy is.
That's right.
We're injecting these, most of the times they're injected, and these short chain amino acids are landing on certain parts of your body that are kind of pre-coded in the peptide formula. And when they do it, they do different things. So some can help with appetite suppressant. Probably the most famous peptide is semaglutide, right? Right. And that's also known as Ozempic and some of these other Wegovy. So that's a peptide.
That's correct.
People might be doing peptide therapy and not even realize it by taking those.
Well, that's what I'm saying is whenever somebody says, hey, we offer peptides, they really aren't even including semaglutide and Ozempic in it, even though those are made fundamentally molecules that are peptide.
Is insulin shots a peptide?
That is a fundamentally molecule of peptide. But when somebody talks about peptide therapy, see what I'm saying? This slang of peptide therapy is a cluster of stuff that you can use to treat people medically. And there's been peptides for years. Insulin was discovered 100 years ago. That was peptide therapy right there. But nobody ever called it peptide therapy.
So why is it being kind of rebranded now? Or what's going on here recently in the last few years?
Well, a lot of stuff that happened in Russia and here, and people have found that these peptide therapies are basically, they're trying to hone in, because some of them are natural and some of them are very close to what we naturally make, and they're trying to find this category of peptides where they can simply give it with minimal side effects to signal one thing in your body. Let's accomplish one thing. Mm-hmm. And so these are things that you can't write a prescription, go to your local pharmacy, and go get it. You can do that for insulin, right? Mm-hmm. You can do that for Wegovy, right? Mm-hmm. But these other molecular peptide molecules, whatever, well, no, I can't say, well, these peptides I'm speaking of in this little slang class, you can't write a prescription of it and go down there and get it because it's not a prescription drug. Okay. So what they've done is they've taken these peptides that have been a lot of these have been around for a long time, and they started using them. And most of them have to be done through a little tiny insulin needle. And the reason is if most peptides, if you ingest them, the peptide bonds between the amino acids, it'll just cleave it with the hydrochloric acid. There's a few interesting...
You're talking about pills that you would ingest.
Right. If you were to ingest, they can make the peptide into a pill, but it's just going to get destroyed by your stomach acid.
Okay.
So this is the peptides are mostly just molecular peptide chains that are really in this category that's really not in traditional medical practices.
Okay. So the people making this peptide therapy, this cocktail of peptides, take semaglutide, for example. Well, maybe take someone that's a little bit more or less known, maybe like CJC1295, right? That's a common peptide, and it helps with muscle mass. It helps with your sleep. It helps, lean some body fat, right? So this peptide, who's making that, and where are they getting these short chain amino acids from, and where are they getting these peptides from? Are they bringing them out from animals? Are they bringing them out from human cadavers? How are they getting?
It's getting synthesized by certain companies, and that's a big deal now. We won't go into the length on this, but you have to get these from compound pharmacies, or you can get it from a research chemical company, one of the two. Well, in wellness centers and spas and non-traditional medical practices, they're not getting it from research companies. They're getting them from compound pharmacies, which is a legitimate business in the United States, monitored by the federal government, and they are purifying that and producing it sterile, safe to use in humans, yes. So they may use an outside supplier, that's making that. I don't know the names of them all, but those are being made, synthesized.
So, and that's a little bit, without going into this too much, but that's why the FDA is cracking down on this a little bit, is these compound pharmacies, which I kind of always equated to the small neighborhood bookstores versus giant Amazon. The Amazon is big pharma, the Pfizers of the world. They're not making peptides, or they are, like the Johnson and Johnson and Pfizer's, and are they making these or not?
Not in this category we're speaking of. Sure, they're making semaglutide. Sure, they're making insulin, but this peptide category that we're focusing on today, no.
And so they're not making them. The small local compound pharmacies are.
But just so you know, there's some huge compound pharmacies out there. I mean, they are very big.
Okay.
So they're just not like, well, I don't want to name the big pharmaceutical companies. But these are basically, we're not getting it from China. You can get it from China or some other outside country and having it shipped in. Most Americans don't want that. No. So it's being made, isolated, and sure, it may change hands. Like this compound pharmacy might have a great supplier over here that they rely on for certain already isolated molecules, and then they make it in something that can be purified, go through all that regulation of the federal government, making it safe to use in humans.
And these compound pharmacies, the ones that are in America, the ones that we at Mojo do business with and have partnerships with, who regulates and oversees them?
No, the federal government. There's all kind of guidelines.
Okay.
They're very strict.
They're not just on the Wild West making stuff. Hey, I've got a peptide. So these things are regulated by someone in the government.
Right.
And then a different part of the government has said, hey, no, stop making these I think, 17 peptides?
I think a few more than that, but some of them on the list are not some we would use anyway, but they've taken so. So, correct. It means if the FDA was upset, I mean, why do they even allow compound pharmacies to even exist? I mean, they could cancel it in a minute with a stroke of a pen, right? But that's not, no, they want them there. That's a legitimate business in the United States.
And we're just talking about peptides. Compound pharmacies make all sorts.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. It's a long list. I mean.
So for whatever reason.
So back to your question. Yeah, the FDA has gotten involved and has pulled. I don't like to use the word banned, because if you go to their FDA website, they don't say banned, but that's the slang of it. But they have pulled a few of these peptides in this group and put them in category 2, which basically means they're at a higher risk level, and compound pharmacies won't be able to provide those anymore.
You think they'll come back?
I do. Okay. And let me tell you my take on this. It's easy to get on podcasts and everybody wants to talk about the FDA and how bad they are, and then there's all this. They're in the pockets with these other, you could do that all day. And having said that, not all the peptides were removed. And you're going back and looking at it. If you go and look, they have each little peptide that they've pulled into category 2, and they have a little explanation to the side of why they pulled that one. Well, almost all the explanations are the same. It's just that It's just a generic canned answer. But they do have a few comments in a few of them. Like if you look at ipamorelin, that's been around for a long time, okay? But they've never been involved or got to review a study of some kind that tested that medicine that made it to the New England Journal of Medicine or some common journal. And then they quoted that, there was a 1 or 2 or some sort of adverse reaction that was very, I wouldn't say deadly, but it was severe. But they were giving it IV. But I don't know if anybody ever did that. Yeah. I mean, we go, why can't you? Hey, I always got these migraines. Why don't I just go to Walgreens or some other and give me a big bottle of Tylenol and let's just grind it up and administer it IV. I bet that'll get rid of that headache. Well, that's about what that is. It's a silly. Nobody's going to do something dumb like that unless they're just absolutely risky and trying anything. So what I'm saying is the way that ipamorelin has been used for a long time, nobody was doing that. And it's been used enough that there are doctors that have experience with it that have recommended how you use it correctly. So any doctor who is wanting to use these things, they take the time to read reviews, articles, things that have been done, small experiments, and become comfortable with using these things clinically and do something. So like everyone I've ever used, I've never had anybody say anything of any alarming nature. So, but I'll tell you on there, like BPC 157.
Another common peptide.
That is a
very popular peptide
all over the world, and that's the one is truly the most disappointing because BPC means body protective compound. It is identical to what's made by our stomach. It secretes it right now. We all have it, and it's used for gut health, inflammation, and we can synthesize it. Amino acid, these peptides are easy to synthesize, by pros, but that has never caused anybody any harm. You can't even tell when you're taking it, but it heals. It's got such healing potential. Like if you got joints or aches or whatnot that you just can't get over, recover, you tried everything, it's amazing. Yeah. And plus, if you're an aggressive exerciser, you push your body to the limits, you want to challenge your muscles. Well, sometimes your muscles get so sore, like the tendons and all this. Well, it might take you 2 months to get over it, but you can take BPC 157 and you might get over in 2 weeks.
Well, you used to be able to. Now you can't.
Right. Well, there may be some oral forms that might still be available.
For that one peptide.
Yeah, for that one, because, see, it's made by the stomach, and it's interesting, that series of amino acid seems to somehow potentially be protected from our stomach acids. Weird enough.
So the BPC 157 that you can inject is now off.
Yeah, you can't get it.
But you can still take the oral form of it.
Yes, and we'll see if it pans out to be as good.
Yeah. So having said that, some of these peptides are now off the menu, but are there similar peptides that are still available that you as a physician can prescribe safely to a patient that was seeking something similar?
Yes, most of them are. There's still some very good ones out there. So like we were talking about CJC 1295 and ipamorelin. Now that combination was a really good combination. You could put them together safely in a vial and you could inject a little tiny dose 5 nights a week. And it was amazing, but you can't get that anymore. And really it's because they've never reviewed it. But now sermorelin and tesamorelin are still there.
And they do something similar.
You're like, well, why didn't they pull those? And I'll tell you why. And I'm giving the FDA credit here, okay? Yeah. Is because those were studied a long time ago and got FDA approved for certain indications. Not that what we're using them for, but they were actually studied before. So even though we're not using it for that, they're not saying, well, it's okay for you to use it for anything else. No, we're using clinically smart judgment of this to use to do certain things for us that are a benefit. But being the fact that they were actually studied and FDA approved before for something else, then they've actually looked at those before and saw that there was not adverse reactions, people got strokes or had cardiac arrest, or bad things didn't happen. So I believe that's probably why they didn't pull those, because they have been in the scopes of the FDA before.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not all bad.
It's not all bad. And but back to the benefits of peptide therapy. So because we did kind of get caught down that FDA thing. So peptide therapy, what type of patient would be someone that would benefit from peptide therapy? How old are they? What's going on in their life that maybe isn't the same because I do know that there are a lot of different peptides that do different things, but what type of person would benefit from just generally peptide therapy?
Okay, well, there's several. The most commonly sought after is somebody that's coming in, they're fatigued, they feel like they're aging, they don't have the pizzazz they used to have. And let me explain how those CJCs and all those I just mentioned, since we're on that, a person coming in, all those are categorized at the G-Relling classification. So they're basically very similar, if not close to being identical, but very similar to what's already being made in our body as GnRH and GnRP. That's a growth hormone releasing peptide or growth hormone releasing hormone. And there's some minor explanations of why they have different names. But basically, these are peptides that are already in our central axis is what I call it. So beneath your brain, you have your hypothalamus, you have your anterior and posterior pituitary. So anyway, these activities are going on all our life that are sending signals down to all the cells in our body to tell them to do great things. Great things. So you have to understand this in order for me to make an explanation of how these things can help somebody. So
hold on one second. Let me stop. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Sorry, we're back. So
we were talking about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland and the great things that they do for our body, and they are necessary. They're basically responsible for a bunch of signaling all over us, even the brain. So basically, the hypothalamus tells the anterior and posterior pituitary what to do. They're very close to each other, and they send a little peptide signal from one to another to tell the pituitary what to do. Well, the posterior pituitary, in most sense, we won't discuss that, but the anterior pituitary, okay. Well, it sends out growth hormone, our own manufactured growth hormone, and other things as well. There's other signaling agents, but let's just stick with that one, for instance. Okay. As we age, they've done studies where they've measured your own growth hormone over time. It definitely declines with age. It's a fact, okay? In that growth hormone, when you get that and other things that come out, well, it also, your body can make insulin growth factor. Now, forget the word insulin in that word, okay? Just think of growth factor, okay? Insulin growth factor is very important for a lot of stuff. So the growth hormone and the insulin growth factor, they do a lot of things in our body. So when you give somebody one of these peptides we were just speaking of, I call them the central axis peptides. You're telling this up here in your pituitary area to, hey, wake up. Can you just do a little bit of what you used to do? These are short acting. These treatments, these peptide treatments are short acting. So it's not like they're in you all day long and the next day. You're just giving a little bit of stimulation. Hey, wake up. And so what you're asking that anterior pituitary to do is like, will you just send out a little shower of what you used to do, say, 20 years ago in the same balance, in the way that you did it, and I want to feel better at the things that can do. So you're like, well, why can't I just give myself insulin growth factor exogenously, and why can't I just give myself growth hormone? I am not a fan of that. I don't believe in that. People do that. Now you're just flooding everything. You're not doing it. It's not your own. You're not doing it in any kind of a balance that you used to do, that your body saw for so many years. Right. I do not believe in that. It's very risky. Okay. So, having said that, so why do we want the insulin growth factor and the growth hormone? What's so great about that? I mean, so that stuff creates an enormous amount of cellular responses all over to do great things. You can tell the cells to start improving your hair, your skin, rebuilding those. It helps with mitochondrial function of the cells, the powerhouse of a cell, all over us. Your cognitive, it definitely has a response on your central nervous system. Your cognitive abilities improve. You sleep better. Your REM sleep improves. And your basically what I call it, this is the layman's term for somebody, it can make your muscle to fat ratio composition wear a little bit more like it used to be. Because you know how it is, you're going to get 20 years, you'll go do the same thing you did 20 years ago, and you'll eat the same thing you did 20 years ago and exercise, and you will not get out of it what you used to. Right. And so you're kickstarting that system just a little bit in order to get those things back. And when somebody gets on it, they already just feel more alert. They have better performance in the gym, and they recover faster out of the gym, and so you can do more. And so this is not like it's not doing anything to your sex hormones. You're not doing anything to testosterone. Although theoretically, we've heard anecdotal stuff, not true proof that your testosterone receptors can either upregulate or have more efficiency. And so you get more benefit out of your own testosterone.
Well, the recovery thing is, I think, what we keep hearing from patients is the recovery. It's not that they're better in the gym, although we have heard that too, but the time it takes for them to recover between workouts is a lot faster, which gets them in the gyms sooner and gets them lifting more, running more, doing more cardio. And I think that, so it's not that the peptide is making you stronger. It's getting you to do more in the gym. It's getting you to sleep better, so maybe you have more energy. That's the other thing we've heard a lot is the sleep, especially on that CJC 1295 IPA, like you mentioned, is people are sleeping through the night where they didn't used to.
Right.
And gosh, you wake up and you've got a full 8 hours instead of a shitty 6 hours over the course of a 5-day work week. That's insane. That's way more helpful.
Right. You know, it was when you were much younger, you slept like a baby. You slept like a rock. And the older you get, you're like, why am I waking up? You know, so, I mean, there's many explanations for that.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, I just look at it like this without getting real scientific, is it just sets you back so many years, kind of like what it was doing then. Your cells are just waiting. They're the same. They're waiting on a signal. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some theory is that we age. That one of the primary reasons why we age is, why is it that the skin turgor goes down and the elasticity of that skin? You know, if you tell people to pick up their hand and look at that, it does. Yeah. It's like, well, why is it doing that? Our body's capable of repairing. Well, okay, but those cells are waiting for a signal from the central area and other places to, hey, you know, but that declines. Yeah. So these are transient little peptide therapies. We give yourself a break. We do it for a few months, and then you give yourself a break, and then we switch to another one. You just don't do it all the time. You're not doing it the rest of your life. But, hey, I don't know of any physician or any clever person that has come up with something where you come to a doctor and you get a shot and you're good. I mean, you're good. You just rebooted the system 20 years ago and it's going to stay that way. No, unfortunately, we're not that good. So you have to stay on some sort of therapy. Yeah. Now, having said all this, you know, diet and exercise and living a good lifestyle is the most important thing. But, you know, these things are just there to enhance, optimize it, and whatnot.
Yeah. So what's why do you think the pessimism and skepticism on peptide therapy, where's that coming from?
Well, first, everybody's different. Like, some people think, hey, if it's a pharmacy and it's a drug, I don't want any medications, I'm not going to do it. Then there's other people like, I wouldn't take anything unless the FDA and a big pharmaceutical company's making it. You know, I mean, there's so many different rules of, hey, I want to be in good health. Yeah. So
that's two things.
That's right. So traditional medical practice aren't prescribing this cluster of peptides that we have. Wow. And no, traditional medicine won't do it. Now we did this in another podcast. Your little code of ethics and guidelines for your specialty are giving you these things that you do, and physicians are nervous to get outside that box for legal reasons, you know, and your insurance carrier are like, why are you doing that? You know, you are this kind of doctor. You need to be doing this, and this is in your guidelines.
So do you think physicians that are prescribing peptide therapy or peptides that are injected usually on someone's usually doing it by themselves in their home, right? Do you think those types of physicians are a little bit more cavalier or callous, or what would you say about that, being one of them?
No, I wouldn't use those words. I would say that, well, first of all, me as a physician doing this now, I still employ and use a lot of the traditional medical standards that I did all the time. All that's not a joke. I mean, it's very good. But what I have learned is that there are a lot of things out there available that don't go through the traditional medicine realm. There's no money in it. Some of them's not any money, and so they'll never go through these big pharmaceutical.
Well, we're using compound pharmacies too.
Right. And compound pharmacies have been around forever. There are so many things on a compound pharmacy list that is so awesome that people aren't even aware that are there. And you would have to come to a wellness spa or cellular medicine type doctor to explore all those great things.
That's unattached from big pharma.
That's right.
And corporate health.
And some people are like, well, that's probably something I can just get on, say, Amazon. I'm not picking on Amazon. Amazon's great. Yeah. But you're like, no. These things are still items that have to be prescribed by a physician and under the care and guidance of a physician in order to use them.
You're just not tethered to the same things that a doctor practicing in a big medical company.
Right. It's not. We're not. There's nobody here that's sick. We're not making people sick. We're not doing anything risky. So these are things that, you have a physician would have to take the time to explore.
This is proactive health.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you have to go to conferences. You have to listen to other doctors who've had experience in these kind of things and use your own medical school training, residency training, and your years of experience to sit there and look at those things. You're like, I get it. Yeah. I understand this. And find a way to make people's quality of life better. Because let's put it this way, I'm a urologist, so let's take your gynecologist, or let's take your endocrinologist. See, I'm speaking a lot of endocrinology here. They're like, well, why would my endocrinologist be? I mean, they are not going to do that in their guidelines, okay? Endocrinologists is like the people that do the glands, the pancreas, the thyroid care, and your pituitary, so they're the endocrine, the glandular system, and they're the experts of diabetes management. There's so much diabetes. I mean, if you have, I'm not going to tell somebody how to do diabetes here. Okay, I'm familiar with it, and I know how to see diabetes patients and use peptides and all that. But I'm not overstepping that. But what it is, you take some of the thing in your endocrine system. You take some of the things, in your sex hormone system. You take some of the things in the inflammation system. So like, well, why would you go to a rheumatologist? Well, yes, the rheumatologist has a lot to do with your immune system and whatnot. But we're taking a lot of those things and putting them over here and taking the pieces from all that and making medical care of things that just don't get handled in traditional medicine.
So someone that wants peptide therapy, they talk to you, what's the dialogue look like? I mean, let's say, I'm tired, I want to lift more, I'd like to lose some weight. Are there a number of set peptides that you can kind of go to in your toolbox and be like, these are the ones you would want? And then how long would they take them for? Like, if someone wants peptide therapy, are they on them indefinitely? Are they on them for the rest of their life?
Well, the ones that these ones that work, what I call the central axis, I made up that term, by the way, because there's peptides that target these things under your brain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we cycle that. Every 2 to 3 months you do it, then you take weeks off, and then you go back on it.
Why the week off, if it's so good for you?
What we like to do is, since it's really just to give your body a break. You don't want that organ to
be dependent on it.
Not that. No, it's not the word. The feedback inhibition, which is a complicated word. Okay, so when you want that organ, your own anterior pituitary, to learn to be without what you just did, and then continue to respond to the hypothalamus from its GHRP or GHR. You want it to go back to recognize its own signal and go back to getting back to its baseline, recognizing those signals. Okay. And then if you just, you don't want to do that forever. And that has not been studied. Okay, I'm sure it's anecdotally been done by many doctors before. Mm-hmm. And so that has been the trend of doing that. And then rotating to another one. Or maybe not even doing it again. You may have really revived that person, and then they seek other type of treatments, but they may feel that they don't need that anymore for a while. And they've got to their goal of certain things. Right. And what I always say is, when you get on any kind of therapy here, you start learning the good habits while you're doing it. It's easier to do the good habits and then make that a real habit forever without it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so the BPC 157, when we were doing that, the injectable, well, let's say if you were to take the pills, you don't need breaks from that. You could do that all the time. Now, they had an AOD 9604, which was a weight loss peptide. Unfortunately, they took that away, which I find absurd. The FDA had already looked at that as a food item, and it was a little bitty fragment. It actually was nicknamed frag on some lists. It was a little fragment of human growth hormone, just the sequence was shorter. It took a piece out of our own growth hormone sequence, and they used that to where it didn't, so when you gave it, it didn't make you secrete any of your own growth hormone.
This seems very smart. It seems like there's a lot of smart people in a room creating these different chains and forms of amino acid peptides to help the human body. Why was this never patented and labeled and branded like it would be Viagra or something similar? Like, why isn't someone making a ton of money off of it? Why are compound pharmacies throughout America, throughout the world, able to kind of concoct their own versions of these and get them out?
Okay, that's a loaded question. So first, some of these things weren't started or invented here in the United States, in other places. And then they just, through the health industry, got to be known. I mean, and so no, they never went through the big pharma and all that. So let's take Viagra. We talked about this on our previous podcast. I'm just using this because everybody can relate to it. Viagra. Well, sildenafil. Mm-hmm. Well, sildenafil was used for other things prior to that. Mm-hmm. Well, how is it that all of a sudden, early 90s, it got patented? Mm-hmm. And then it was Viagra. All it did was increase the dose. It had 25 milligrams was used for this other stuff. Yeah. And then they realized it had some side effects that were great. And so they patented it. So the drug was, the molecular drug made was already there, but then it got packaged. Yeah. And so like with semaglutide, weird enough, the Ozempics and Wegovy. So the delivery system and dose is what got patented.
So that's a great peptide example. Mm-hmm. So semaglutide did get patented. Is by Ozempic.
Yeah, so like Wegovy is a patented delivery system with the medicine at a certain dose.
And you talk about that actual doohickey pen, that little thing that you do to inject it, that's the patent, or it's not the medication itself? It's the whole thing.
That whole package is patented. Just
so
that whole.
Take CJC 1295. Why didn't someone patent that?
They could now. Now that they got pulled back, there might be some money in the pharmaceuticals going back. So that's the conspiracy part of this, is that the FDA, and I see it though, now I gave credit to the FDA, I'm just saying that some of those things had not been looked at in a way that they feel they need to be looked at. So they may be waiting for another big pharma to pick it up, run a study on it. Whether it worked for what it was intended or not, doesn't really matter. Hold on a second. Well, yeah. Well, no. Well, you know, with these things to go back to the FDA, you've got to have these pilot studies that have to have legitimate, statistically significant results. Let's say somebody wanted to take the CJC for sleep. Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, we got a study here. We're going to see if this is a sleep medication we can market in the future. Right. Well, you may see that, hey, you got this group over here that got placebo, and this group over here didn't, and the patients don't know it and the doctors don't know it. So that's a double-blind study. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, this group over here that really was getting the real stuff, they were sleeping a little better. But if you didn't make it statistically significant on there, it'll fail. Well, there were no severe side effects, adverse, terrible events. But you know what? The FDA looked at it. Mm-hmm. They saw it. Yeah. So in the end, it might come back through the compound pharmacies, but it never made the studies that were justifiable enough to make it FDA approved to use it for improved sleep.
So it could be years before these peptides come back to the general population.
Mm-hmm. So like take
decade.
Yeah, take tesofensine. Okay, that's not a peptide, but it's clustered in that peptide category. Yeah. Okay, well, a long time ago it was used for a study for neurological issues. You could see on the results, and the FDA, that was in the crosshairs of the big time folks. Mm-hmm. Well, it helped a little bit with those for what they intended to look for, but it wasn't statistically significant. But what they noticed in that study was there was no adverse events, but people lost some weight. Interesting. They had some of them lost like up to 15%, and so then now it's in the compound pharmacies for weight loss, and the FDA didn't yank it.
Right. So what's stopping these peptides that have been pulled back by the FDA? These 20 or whatever. Are they banned? Are they restricted? Are they warned against? Can they still be made by someone right now?
Oh yeah. But you'll have to get them from the research companies. You won't be able to get it from a compounding pharmacy that a physician is going to legally be protected without risk to prescribe.
So they can't be prescribed. The compound pharmacies won't make them anymore because they've been pulled back. But you're saying a research medical facility can make them?
Oh yeah, they'll still be doing it. And it'll just say, so what I'm basically saying, they're going to be on shelves of all those kind of places, and you're going to be able to get you can get online and find somebody that'll get it for you.
Same stuff.
That
was legal last week.
Yes. Yeah. You just won't get it through the federally guidelined controlled compound pharmacies, not controlled, but monitored. And, you won't be getting it through that vehicle.
Can Joe Schmo get it directly, or do they still need a doctor to get it that way?
They won't need a doctor. If Joe Schmo wants to research online, they'll figure it out. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone had that peptide, they really liked it the last year or 2 years, and it really changed their life, they can still get it. It's just they got to do their homework and go get it.
Okay, I'm not promoting that whatsoever. Okay. Yeah. But, you'll be able to get it. It's still online right now.
But so for the other peptides, so we were talking about just the type of patient that would want peptides or peptide therapy. Because like you said, there are dozens and dozens out there still available, legally backed by the FDA, made by compound pharmacies that we partner with. So for all the remaining, quote, good peptides, so you talked about a patient that was wanting to feel better, get that energy and kind of just libido back. What other type of things would peptides help someone with?
Okay, so like one thing here is we help with hair preservation or regrowth to some degree, and GHK copper is in that peptide cluster. Okay. Now, they are not going to let you can read on there, they won't let you do that injection version of that, but they make skin creams and hair foams that are remarkable. They'll usually mix it with thymulin, which is another peptide. That is a topical foam or a spray that is amazing. You have to get that by prescription too. Okay. And so that's in some of the hair regrowth formulas, and it's a peptide, and it's amazing. So a lot of people come in, I want to preserve my hair, I want to get it back. I've had people come just for that, and then they were interested in other stuff too, and that costs a little money. Now, there's also some other hair products as well that are prescription only that we offer as well that are very good too. But that's an example. GHK copper is already in us, so it's not foreign to us. Right. It's in our own plasma floating around, and it's for elastin and collagen that's in the skin and the hair, and it's remarkable.
This stuff that's sold in containers, you've seen it, the collagen that you can buy it at Target, you can buy it on Amazon. So that's a peptide?
Collagen is not a peptide. It is a molecular structures in our body, okay. But it is. We have collagen all over us. There's connective tissue everywhere.
So people that are buying, a tub of collagen and mixing it with their, protein shake, whatever, what is that doing for them?
Well, we're way out of the peptide line here, but this is basically people are taking that for their hair and their skin, and some people think it's for their joints because collagen's in everything. Right. So you're ingesting it, which I never saw that coming.
Ingesting collagen?
Yes.
How was it used for traditionally in medicine, collagen?
Not in being ingested. I mean, it's just a component of our makeup.
Right. Oh, so you could never take collagen before this?
Well, it just became popular one day. I mean, collagen, the word collagen is not foreign to me. It's the basic makeup.
Collagen, not a peptide, but people are starting to take it. It got on some mom trend or something like that.
Really don't know where it started, to be honest with you. But a lot of these nutraceutical and also some of my pharmacies, they offer their little mix of collagen. Most of it, though, to be honest with you, is topical stuff. Okay. But there's a lot of places you can go without a prescription to start getting collagen to help with skin and hair and things like that.
So roughly, how many peptides would you find yourself prescribing to just an array of patients? Are there hundreds? Are there a dozen? Are there?
Yeah, probably around a dozen now that I find that are worth it. But here's the thing. Most people that come in here, Americans and their problems, 80-90% of them, there's a central core of issues that need to be resolved first. I always tell people, like, look, we can help you lose weight. We can help you feel better, sleep better, do all this stuff at the very beginning. And we need to accomplish that. Then later on, we'll work on longevity, making your skin, hair, all these other little smaller things that are important to people. But the central core of what's wrong with people, we address those first. And then that's a small cluster of things that we offer. I mean,
And again, it's people being proactive about their own health. So someone that's overweight, if they go to their doctor, versus coming to you, there's just more that we can do and spend time with them to get them going down the right road. So when they get to that next phase of feeling better, that's where you would want peptide therapy for something like recovery or muscle mass or hair. And skin.
Yeah, you can get very specific, but if somebody comes in with a generalized, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I'm just fatigued, I don't sleep well, I can't get up and do things the way I used to do, I don't have any sex drive. Well, 3 big areas to get that back. One is the glutide stuff, to lose weight. Liraglutide, semaglutide, and the tirzepatide. And that's a podcast for another day. But, some people are just like, if I could just lose weight, I'll get my self-image back. And I'll feel good about myself. I want to get out and do things. And sometimes they're like, that's all I want to start with, because I feel like if I lost weight, a lot of my issues would go away. And that's true in some cases, especially those that are not, they're and their partner are not being really sexually active, because both of them probably have a body image issue and it's just they're holding off. So absolutely. Yeah. That's a peptide, but I wouldn't consider that peptide therapy, but that's going into that big area that people are coming here for to try to get that back. And it also curbs down any kind of alcohol addiction as well. And that's, again, a talk for another day, but that makes a big deal.
Which peptide would help curb alcohol addiction?
All of them do. Semaglutide is obviously the most popular. So it helps you lose weight, you lose your cravings, food cravings, and it might be that you like to.
So all the glutide ones do.
That's a glutide thing, and there's 2 more coming up. So it's here to stay. That's a good podcast for another day. I mean, but so yeah, when you stop drinking as much alcohol and you losing weight and you're not sleeping better, you're not eating junk. You know what? A lot of those things can reverse, honestly. And so I'm not telling everybody to come in and get that. I'm just saying that's one angle. Now, some of them, after talking to them and getting some labs, who realize, hey, all that cluster of stuff that you just complained about, they just may need hormone replacement or optimization that's right for them. And that works very well. And there's many ways to do that. It's different for men and women.
Testosterone therapy,
estrogen and progesterone, maybe not, and just finding some modality that works for that person so they can accomplish. And some of those people sleep better. They're sleeping better when you get that right. Then they're really some like pellet therapy in women. You talking about if we were to do a questionnaire on all patients after we gave them treatment, the women that got the pellet therapy, they are just. They're like, what have I been missing? I can't believe this, So that's the pellet therapy. I mean, that's the hormone replacement therapy. And then you have the peptide therapy. So I would say that the peptide therapy, the glutide therapy, or the hormone replacement or optimization, those big 3 categories, we kind of start with on people. And you realize a lot of the problems got fixed, and then we'll just start pin picking and pointing and just trying to focalize one thing. And I usually pick up stuff when I check their labs. I'm like, well, you need to take these vitamins, or you really need to do this.
So blood work tells us a lot about our bodies and what's going on. Blood work tells us if we might have low testosterone. It might tell us about our cholesterol level and a bunch of other things. Would a blood panel tell someone if they need peptide therapy?
I would say no.
How would you know? How would you know you need peptide therapy?
Peptide therapy, I would do it just from what they're speaking of, they're talking about in their complaints. It's not an age thing. It's not a hormone thing. It's not, abnormalities in your cholesterol panel or anything like that, or your liver panel or your kidney panel. Now, having said that, when you do some blood tests for insulin resistance, maybe you discover that, they're a little more insulin resistant than this other person, and that's a complicated subject. Yeah, peptide can bring some of that back. First of all, semaglutide and stuff's good for that. Some of those central axis peptides can help with that.
Are there any existing medications someone might be on that might deter you from prescribing peptide therapy or some peptide supplement?
Well, first of all, we wouldn't do central axis peptide therapy in somebody that recently was treated for cancer. Or is being worked up for cancer. That's the central axis ones. Anything that's manipulating growth hormone or growth factor, you don't want those in your system while you're in that workup.
Because of the chemotherapy part, or because of something else?
No, if you have an active tumor in you and you're messing with growth factor and growth hormone, theoretically you could potentiate the growth of that. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't mean you don't need to do it, and that's another reason you don't just take growth hormone or growth factor. You'll start making some of those things, So yeah.
So if you take HGH, you could develop cancer, maybe.
Yeah, those studies that people have done. Yeah,
So you had mentioned we don't do HGH at Mojo.
No, we don't.
Go into that a little bit more depth, because if HGH is a form of a peptide therapy, is it not? And I know back in the day, a lot of baseball players were getting busted doing HGH. What were they doing? What's that?
Okay, they're basically taking human growth hormone. All right.
Which is injected.
Yes, in most, yeah. Now, there's different versions of this, just any kind of growth hormone. So even the little peptides we just mentioned a while ago, even the ones that the FDA looked at, like sermorelin, you can't take that and be a professional player. They can't. It's not because
that's where some of this negative connotation comes from too.
That is
sports talk radio, and
even
got busted doing steroids. And
even the BPC 157. If they detected that in your system, a flag would come up, and that's what a big controversy there is. Like, somebody's in the NFL and they put all that strain on their body and they got a bad ankle. Let's say there's a certain quarterback right now who's been struggling. Everybody knows he's been struggling with his ankle thing. And they're not playing this weekend, and if you could give that person TB 400 and BP 157,
And he's not being tested because he's on injured.
Yeah, they probably can't do it, and they'll get Well, no. I know what you're getting at there. What I'm saying is they probably would avoid even doing it altogether because they're going to get busted for a banned substance. Is it because it's bad for us? No, it's just because. First of all, it's not. It's just not.
To get everyone to compete on this.
Everybody needs to be on the same playing field. That's right, and so it's just all over the place. So
for HGH. Why not HGH? Why do you draw the line there? What's going on there in our body?
Okay, as I referenced before, what is more clinically sound, in my opinion, is you taking G-renin type peptides that are very similar or mimic the GHRHs or the GHRPs.
That's
growth hormone. That's right. Growth hormone releasing peptide or growth hormone releasing hormone. Those aren't growth hormones. Those are basically the signaling agents to tell your anterior pituitary, for instance, hey, you, knock, knock, knock. Can you just send a cascade of growth hormone and other nice things like you used to do in the balance and the exact same molecule?
Okay.
So you giving yourself growth hormone or insulin or any kind of growth factor.
Now it's not the messenger. Now it's an actual.
You're actually flooding the system with this stuff. So now all these cells that are begging for the signal to do all those great things, you're just flooding it at no good balance, no good rhythm, and you're going to tell your body to make a whole lot of growth factor, which is made in your liver and all other kind of places. And now it's going to get flooded with that in an unbalanced signaling way. And now you've got yourself in a category of being unsafe. And that's what I always say, don't ever be a short fuse. Hey, that person, you start getting growth hormone and growth factor, they're going to be awesome. Yeah. They're going to be like on cloud 9 for maybe 5-10 years, maybe 10. But man, they're going to be sorry later.
So some of these ball players, they got a contract coming up or they're about to be sent down to the minors. That's when you would find them taking these things and competing outside of the rules and
some of them that it's interesting how some of these athletes, I don't know how, but they pull themselves out of the testing because they're either on injury list or they're out of contract. They'll pull themselves out of the testing because they're not actively competing. But when they're getting ready to come back, they have to alert the doping agencies that they're coming back, and then they'll have to be tested for a certain amount of time before they come back. I'm not a pro in all that. We see that happening. But
I'm just thinking about the connotation of peptide therapy and any negativity that be out there. And
I can easily see that because a growth hormone being thrown in there with it.
But you've illustrated the difference between HGH and peptide therapy. And peptide therapy, we're putting peptides they're putting really the messengers back in our body that tell our body to do what it used to be doing. And our body already has that capability still in it. It's just not being activated. And that's kind of what peptide therapy is. Versus HGH, you're like you said, you're flooding the body with new actual hormones that didn't exist in your body. And now your body's just getting overwhelmed by it. Which, if you're a young, healthy male and you want to hit 40 home runs, great. Go do that. Hope you don't get, caught kind of thing. But for what we have our patients coming to Mojo for, no way, not a chance.
I would rephrase that. It would be, yes, this peptide therapy would be administered by a physician with an understanding of the appropriate dose, because in the end, we want you to live a long time. We want longevity. Mm-hmm. So any nutcase can go out there and order some of this peptide therapy. Well, I'm going to do what Doc said, but I'm going to save some money and go do it, and you do it in unnatural ways and all that. Well, okay, so now it might be a little risky. It'd be no difference than somebody calling here that's been taking shots of testosterone and they're on this high dose and all this. I'm not going to continue that. I'm going to do what I feel is clinically safe. I mean, I could jack you up, women and men with tons of testosterone. They come to the door, make them feel great. It's the same. Maybe it might be the same testosterone that I'm given, but not in the same manner. So you could, even though it's a good molecule, you might be abusing it. Right. So yes, peptides under clinical guidance done appropriately.
And testosterone.
And testosterone and estrogen, all done appropriately. Right. We would do it in the sense that I feel you would live a long time with a good quality of life.
Long fuse, not short fuse.
That's right.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I think that's a good ending. Anything else you want to kind of tie a bow on peptides about, or just?
Yeah, I would say the peptides, it gets, you're welcome to come talk to me about peptides. I can help do individual small focus and what I feel about them. But, I've given myself peptides. I've done it to my friends, family, and there's a lot of benefits if it's done correctly. Don't be scared of it just because the FDA pulled some into Category 2 to where now the compound pharmacies can't make it. That's what it is. You can call it banned, but it's banned from that vehicle of delivery. And since they're doing that, there's no wise physician that's going to be prescribing those on the banned list, if you want to call it that. We're going to stick to the ones that didn't get pulled out under Category 2 and continue to find the clinical usefulness of it. And for those that did get pulled, we can find alternatives besides, just those that can achieve your goals.
Well, I love it. Thanks a lot. I think that was a good comprehensive look at peptides. We'll be back for the next one next week. Everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening to us on the Mojo Podcast Studio.
Thank you.